right, so let's dive into something pretty fascinating today. I think, you shared with me this devotional text, and I gotta say, it really caught my eye. It's all about finding divine guidance when you're right in the thick of a crisis. And what's really interesting, it uses this story from Two Kings, this ancient tale about three kings, and they're facing this, life or death situation. It just goes to show that even people in positions of power, they can find themselves in moments where they're completely lost.
Yeah, and what's really powerful about this story, I think, is it doesn't shy away from the human element.
Mm.
These kings, Jehoram of Israel, Jehoshaphat of Judah, and the king of Edom, they're at war. Their armies are stranded in the desert with absolutely no water. Can you imagine that desperation?
Yeah.
I mean, the weight of responsibility these guys are carrying if their troops are literally, dying of thirst. It's a pretty stark reminder that crises, they could hit anybody at any time. It doesn't matter what your status is, what kind of power you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what really struck me is that they don't turn to the prophet Elisha for guidance right away. These are kings, they're used to making decisions, calling the shots, strategizing. But here they are totally reliant on something that's beyond their control, beyond their understanding. It makes you wonder, what finally drives them to seek that outside help?
That's a great question. I think it really speaks to this very human tendency. We often try to exhaust all of our own options before we even consider looking for guidance, especially from a source that might challenge our assumptions or require us to, surrender control. But this story, and I think the deeper message within this text, is that maybe flipping that script could be incredibly powerful. Instead of seeking guidance as a last resort, what if it was our first instinct?
I love that it's like proactively aligning ourselves with a greater wisdom right from the get-go. I have to admit, though, sometimes I struggle with what exactly seeking guidance even looks like in a practical sense. Is it meditation? Is it prayer? Is it just taking some time to really think things through?
Well, you've hit on some key points there. This text, it doesn't prescribe some rigid formula, but it does offer some really intriguing suggestions. It starts with creating space for reflection, for quieting that internal noise. In prayer, whether it's a formal practice or just a heartfelt conversation, can be a way of opening ourselves to that larger perspective. It's about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers and being willing to ask for help.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about those times when you're in the middle of a totally chaotic situation and you need clarity fast? Does seeking guidance even work in those moments?
That's a really important question, and I think this story offers a nuanced perspective on timing. It's not about being passive or just, waiting around for a sign to drop from the sky. It's more about cultivating this inner awareness, the sensitivity to the subtle ways that guidance might be presented. It could be a sudden feeling of peace about a decision, an unexpected opportunity that arises, even a conversation with a friend that just sparks a new insight.
So it's like having this constant antenna of being receptive to those whispers of guidance, even when everything around you is, a storm. It's not always a booming voice, right? But even those subtle nudges can lead us in the right direction.
Exactly. And sometimes, sometimes the guidance might be to wait, to be patient, to trust that things will unfold as they should. And that can be the hardest part, especially when you're facing a crisis and you're really craving an immediate resolution. But this text suggests that embracing that pause, that period of waiting, can actually lead to much better outcomes.
That really resonates with me. Think about all those times when you rushed into a decision fueled by anxiety or fear, only to regret it later. Maybe if we had paused, taken a breath, sought some guidance, that things might have unfolded a little differently.
Absolutely. It's like that old saying, haste makes waste.
Yeah.
Sometimes taking that extra time to really seek guidance can lead to much more effective solutions. And, the story about the kings in the desert, their big moment of crisis, it takes a pretty dramatic turn when they finally do seek that guidance.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm on the edge of my seat. What happens next? So these kings, right, they're in a really tough spot. They're desperate for like a solution to this water crisis. They finally turn to Elisha. They're ready for that divine guidance. But what happens next? I mean, it just blew my mind when I first read it.
It's definitely a scene that challenges our logical minds.
Mm-hmm.
Elisha tells them to dig ditches in this dry valley, ditches in a desert where there's no rain in sight. It seems completely counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, if I was one of those kings, I think I'd be questioning everything at that point, digging holes in the ground. I mean, how's that going to solve anything? It seems like the exact opposite of what you'd want to do in that situation.
And I think that's exactly the point that this story is trying to get across. It's about letting go of our limited understanding and really trusting in a power that goes way beyond our logic. It's about having faith. It's about taking that leap even when it doesn't make sense on a rational level.
So they put their trust in Elisha's guidance and start digging, right?
Yeah.
So what happens next? Does water just like magically appear out of thin air?
Well, not exactly out of thin air, but something pretty miraculous does happen.
Hmm.
The text describes how these ditches, these seemingly random holes in the ground, they start filling up with water. And it's not just a trickle. It's enough to quench the thirst of the entire army and even give them a strategic advantage over their enemies.
Wow, talk about an unexpected solution. It makes you wonder, where did that water even come from? Are there any clues in the text?
That's where the story gets really interesting because it leaves some room for interpretation. Some scholars believe it points to a literal miracle, a divine intervention that defied the laws of nature. Others see it as more of a metaphorical representation of how trusting in a higher power can open us up to all these possibilities that we couldn't have foreseen.
That makes sense. Whether you take it literally or metaphorically, the core message is still incredibly powerful. It's about recognizing that even when things seem absolutely hopeless, there's always potential for solutions that we can't even begin to imagine.
Exactly. It's about nurturing that trust in a power greater than ourselves, a power that can orchestrate events in ways that we could never predict. And, this isn't just some abstract theological concept. I think we can all relate to those times when a solution just appears out of nowhere. We're at our wit's end and suddenly a door opens.
You're so right. It might not be as dramatic as a desert miracle, but those experiences, they can be incredibly powerful. It makes you question what's truly possible and challenges our whole understanding of how things work in the universe.
It's like there's this unseen hand guiding us, connecting the dots in ways we could never have imagined. And I think this story really encourages us to be more open to those possibilities, to really embrace the mystery of it all.
So how do we actually apply this idea of trusting in a higher power to provide solutions? Does the text give us any concrete suggestions?
It does. It starts with remembering this story, holding on to the fact that miracles do happen, even if they don't always look the way we expect them to.
Yeah.
It's about choosing to believe in the possibility of the impossible, even when logic is telling us otherwise.
Yeah, it's like that saying, loop in the net will appear. This story really encourages us to take that leap of faith, even when we don't have all the answers.
Absolutely. And it's not about just passively waiting for those solutions to magically fall into our laps. The text also emphasizes the power of action.
Yeah.
But action that's aligned with that deeper guidance that we've sought. Remember, the king still had to dig those ditches. It was a collaborative effort, a combination of faith and action.
Right. That's such a good point. It's not about sitting back and expecting miracles to just happen. It's about actively participating in the process, even if those steps we're guided to take seem a little illogical, at first.
Exactly. And, another powerful takeaway from this story, I think, is this emphasis on collective prayer, on seeking support and guidance from a community of like-minded people. Yeah. The text suggests that there's this synergistic effect when people come together with a shared intention, a shared faith.
It's like that whole idea that where two or three are gathered, there's a greater force at work. I've definitely felt that in my own life, the strength and support that comes from connecting with others who are also on a spiritual path.
Yeah, it's a beautiful concept, isn't it, that we're not meant to navigate these challenges all alone. We can lean on each other, share our experiences, and really bolster each other's faith, especially when those doubts start creeping in.
Makes you wonder what would happen if we approached all our problems, with this kind of mindset, this blend of seeking guidance, trusting in a higher power, taking inspired action, and leaning on each other for support.
It's a powerful question to ponder. This deep dive has really taken us on quite a journey, hasn't it? I mean, from those depths of despair in that desert to the miraculous appearance of water, we've explored how this ancient story can really offer timeless wisdom for navigating the crises that we all face in our own lives.
It's pretty incredible how a story that's thousands of years old can still resonate so strongly today. It reminds us that even though the specifics of our lives might be different, those core challenges, the need for guidance, support, hope, those things stay with us throughout human history.
And maybe that's the most profound message from this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
That we're not alone in our struggles, that there's this universal need for something bigger than ourselves, and this understanding that trusting in that power can lead to unexpected solutions and a deeper sense of peace, even in the midst of all the chaos.
So as we wrap up today, I'm curious what resonated most with you from this whole exploration. What will you take with you from this deep dive? Maybe it's that invitation to seek guidance more proactively, or to cultivate that trust in a higher power, or to remember the strength that comes from connecting with others. Whatever it is, I hope this conversation has sparked something within you, a sense of possibility, a renewed faith that Even in the middle of a crisis, there's always hope. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.